Yo, what's up, everybody? I am excited to get to our episode this week, which analyzes Five Nights at Freddy's. But before I do, I want to give some updates. Thank you to all of those who have listened as we've gotten into our first couple of movies on this podcast. We're still developing this little project, finding the right vibes and so on. To that effect, Jen and I have decided to switch up the name of the show. We're now going to call it Harry and Jen Do Horror with Friends. And we think it just kind of makes more sense given the actual tone of these conversations and what they embody. So we're still going to do the same stuff we've been developing, analysis, criticism, witty banter, just under a new name. I'm also going to take this moment to ask once again to help us find new people with these conversations. If you have a horror nerd bud, why not share this little podcast, huh? It would be lovely to keep growing this project into 2024. All right, without further ado, let's do Five Nights at Freddy's.
Even without possessed animatronics, right? This is a really dangerous thing to be doing for $1,000.
I'm Jen Lightfoot. I'm a tattoo artist and an artist, and I am very tired tonight. So my drink of choice tonight is wine and Coke, which is what somebody made me recently, and it's surprisingly delicious.
Can you?
It's just like half wine and half Coke.
What kind of wine?
Red wine?
Huh.
I don't remember what the bottle said.
Do you have it cold or do you have it warm?
It's cold. That's a good question, though. It's mainly the temperature of what the Coke was, which was in the fridge. So,
Gotcha.
yeah, it's like a trash person's drink, is what.
What do you? Oh, no, it's not a trash person's drink. It's the insightful person's drink. You're a pioneer. What do you pair it with? That's my question.
Oh, I don't know.
Justin, I think you've already got the pair, the Coke and the wine. Like you've already got two very different things together, and
Yeah, true.
that might be as much stuff as you can mix.
Yeah, you can't put more in there.
You can't add both.
I would pair it with a steak and Twizzlers. Hi, I'm Harry Nichols. I am an English teacher. I am a singer-songwriter, and I am also very tired. I am not drinking wine and Coke. I am drinking seltzer. And I have nothing else to say. Tonight, we're ruining the night of Megan Paustian. Megan, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me on, guys. I'm happy to be here. And I have to say, I'm also grateful that you did not give me too terrifying of a movie.
Mm-hmm.
You could have ruined my night worse than you did.
Well, we wanted to ask you what is your relationship with horror like? Where do you stand on that?
I hate it passionately. I guess my starting place is when I was babysitting, when I was in 8th grade. I think I was about 13. And I was babysitting for these 3 kids, and their parents said, "Oh, we rented this movie. Once, don't watch it with kids, but when the kids go to sleep, watch this if you want to." And it was Silence of the Lambs, and I watched it alone babysitting. And I remember sitting next to this huge window and just the black night outside, and I have never gotten over that.
Yeah.
That's a dark fucking movie to watch at 13. Like for your first horror movie?
It was dark. Yes.
Yeah. I feel like usually kids get ushered into scary movies with like Five Nights at Freddy's. You know what I mean? Like popcorn, poppy teen stuff. But that's a grown-up movie.
I love that they were like, "Oh, child, here's Silence of the Lambs. Watch this." What? Oh my God.
I think I was very mature as a babysitter, but I was not very mature as a movie viewer. I was not ready, and I'm still not ready. But yeah, I feel like Five Nights at Freddy's is more of a gateway horror movie, and I
Hmm.
appreciate this choice because I don't think that it will haunt me as deeply as some did.
Well,
So then, can I
that's
ask one follow-up question then? How did you? Because I'm always curious. We've had a couple of people who do this podcast who are just like, I hate horror movies, and
Mhm.
so my question is, why did you say yes to this?
I don't know. And before I watched the movie, I admit I did have some regret because I didn't know what the movie was going to be or how scary it was going to be. And I was like, wait, I was thinking back to my Silence of the Lamb experience. I was like, what am I doing? This is dangerous for me. Um, but for Jen asked me and I didn't want, I wanted to talk to Jen. So even if it
Hmm.
was terrifying, I was like, I'm
well, I
going to.
remember when I texted you, I was like, "Hey, do you want to do Five Nights at Freddy's?" And you were like Freddy Krueger? And I was like, "No, no." I was like, "It's like a tween horror." You were like, "Okay." Yeah, I was like,
Is what I need. Yeah, tween horror.
there's a couple gruesome moments though in it.
We'll have to
Um,
get into it.
yeah, we
Yeah.
will get there. The one other thing we do is the guest has to summarize the movie. So how would you give a short summary of it?
So our main character is a guy named Mike. He has been struggling. He's been losing some jobs, and he is haunted by the memory of the disappearance of his brother when they were little kids. And he ends up getting a job as a night security guy at this creepy place called Freddy's that's like Chuck E. Cheese that has been out of commission for 20 years or something like that.
So like Chuck E. Cheese.
So exactly, exactly. Like if Chuck E. Cheese, when Chuck E. Cheese shut down, if the store and the space never actually left, it's like that. And weird things start to go down. He has a little sister who he's in charge of, and there's some family conflict because the aunt is trying to get this little girl. Um, but yeah, things get creepy at Freddy's. There are animatronic animals who turn out to be inhabited by abducted children in some way that I was a little bit confused by.
Hmm.
And there is a battle for the life and soul, I think, of Abby. And in the end, Mike and Abby escape alive. I should also say
Hmm.
it's a hot cop along the way who has some ties to Freddy's.
That's right.
Mhm.
There's a lot of hot people in this movie, actually. This
There
is it's
are.
one of my main pet, and we always jump right to critique, and we always like blow past analysis, so I don't want to do that. But I do just want to briefly state for the record that one of my pet peeves in horror movies is horror movies about beautiful people in scary situations,
Uh-huh.
unless it's supposed to be that kind of movie.
Uh-huh.
I digress.
Yes, it's like a CW TV show in like a movie. Like they all look like I don't know, teen models. Like,
Yeah, yeah. So I want to go around briefly and just talk about some, as we have mentioned, this is the section where I try to give this movie probably a little more credit maybe than it deserves. But I always like to go around and just get like an analytical take from people. Like what do you feel like are some of the deeper themes, messages, ideas, perspectives that this movie reveals? Um, and does anyone want to go first?
So I actually thought that the some of the ideas in this movie were really interesting. I felt like it was thinking about the psychology of facing the past and dealing with traumatic guilt. So the fact that this main character, when he was, how old was he when this happened? 7 or something?
Like single digits, definitely.
Single digits, definitely single digits. And he witnesses his brother getting abducted when he was like supposed to be watching over him. And so I think there is something really interesting about like how people cope with that over
Mm,
years and decades and what happens when you have this guilty, awful, traumatic situation as a little kid and how do you
mm.
wrestle with that? there's also a lot of things with dreams and what dreams do and what you're trying to process with those. So I thought it was pretty interesting there. There's some stuff definitely about the relationship between the human and machines. And we've got a lot of that with our creepy animatronic guys. I'm a little confused by some of the biology of that, actually, how it's working, and we can maybe get
Sure.
into the details. And also some thinking about family court and custody law.
Mm.
So, we got some heavy hitters, I think, with some of the issues.
Yeah, there's a lot there. That's interesting. So for me, I also like I felt like there was maybe sort of like a light capitalist critique, like capitalism critique in it as well.
Hmm.
Um but yeah, certainly all those things. You mentioned that dream book. Maybe we can start there. Just like what like that book of dreams, like I there's so many shots of it, right? It's just like so many images of that dream book. It's hard to miss. I don't know. I mean, Jen, you're our visual person. Like, did that like raise any flags for you?
It's funny, I did not write that in my notes
Huh.
at all. I mean, I think wrote more about like what Megan was saying about like trauma.
Oh, all
It's
right.
like so much trauma and like parental relationships, even if it's not parental, like
Mm,
caring for child non-conventional type families. But the book, yeah, I'm not sure what to make of the book because we focus more, I feel like, on the medication that he takes and how he goes into his dream process than like what the book actually says. Like it's sort of like he mentions it to like I guess his coworker at the mall in the beginning. I don't know, I feel like we get like the mechanics of how the book is telling him how
hmm.
to go deeper into his dreams. It's like I don't know, he just has this sense that when he's in Freddy's, he can get closer to Garrett.
Mhm.
Yeah,
But yeah, what? Garrett isn't one of the kids. Why
I
is
know. I had to look that up at the end. I was like, but wait, which kid was Garrett? And it turns out that he was none of them.
he was not?
Um, some nerds on the internet think that he's like the cupcake or like the little cake thing that. But anyway, like
I like some nerds on the internet.
well, it was Reddit. I mean,
That's yeah, definitely some nerds on the internet.
those are some nerds on the. I mean, look. Um, yeah, I agree. I think that the book is like more of just like a way of thinking about his sort of like failed attempt at he for so much of this movie he's like trying to reclaim this moment from his past, you know what I mean? To the detriment of his present, right? And the book is kind of a like just the vehicle that he's trying to use to do that, I think. Um this is one of those movies that like states one of its themes just outright near the end when he says something along the lines of like I was so fixated on the past that like I forgot to pay attention to the present, right? Um so yeah, so there's that. I thought it was also interesting. One of the things that I did like about this movie was the way the restaurant serves as like a second shot at redemption for that situation, and it even the little girl Abby even like goes so far as to like say that it's like just like camping when she's like sleeping in the um
Fort?
security office, you know, to sort of say that like this is okay, like now we are doing this again, right? um so yeah, I thought that was like an interest that was a level of subtlety that I was not expecting from a movie based on a web game.
Mhm.
I felt like the book was called Dream Theory, right?
I think so.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I looked it up to see if that was an actual book, and it said something that I didn't even understand what this meant. And I could have gone and read the whole article, but I didn't. It said that it referred to the Five Nights at Freddy's six maze mini game.
Oh.
So it's something like in the game. But one thing I thought it was interesting is he really does have a theory of dreams, and that was kind of unique. And he talked about how there's this idea that we don't actually forget
Mhm.
anything, we just can't access it, but it's all sort of recorded somewhere in our mind. And so he wants to sleep so that he can go and try to retrieve the memories of that day and try to figure out who the man was who took Garrett.
Mhm.
So I thought it was kind of a fascinating way to think about dreams. I really liked that part.
I really like that part too. And I feel like that also is like with trauma, how they're like, oh, if you can't remember something from like a traumatic moment, like it is trauma, like, you block out certain things, you like forget them. So it kind
Mhm.
of makes sense that he had a
Yeah.
traumatic moment and was blocking it out, but maybe could remember it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I also felt like the dream thing was very like a 90s thing. Like we were all into dreams in the 90s. And I
Mm,
felt like this had like a
Hmm.
Casper 90s, like sentimental, spooky vibe. Like it was like that,
totally.
uh, yeah, gateway, but like, I don't know, like even the ant villain felt like Joan
She's
Cusack. And
that
like,
awful woman from Casper.
yeah,
Absolutely.
she
With the
is the
Monty
awful
Python guy,
one.
right? Like, have you all seen
Yes,
Casper?
yes,
No.
I own it. I love it.
Oh, it's such a cute like family movie. It's got Bill Pullman. I have a soft spot for Bill Pullman.
Me too.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
But you're right. The evil aunt is cartoonish, isn't she? She's so mean that we like don't even really know her name for for so much of the movie. I wrote her down at first as just like Aunt Mean Lady or something like that. And I think literally like 40 or 50 minutes into the movie they say that she's Aunt Jane or Aunt
Oh, is
Jean.
that when she's on the floor and the little boy's like, "Oh, silly Aunt Jane." It's like,
Yeah, yeah.
That might be it.
yeah, I
Yeah,
didn't.
something like that. So yeah, I thought that was interesting. And I think that that is also something um that people point to as far as like the interesting gray area that this movie occupies as far as like genre is
Hmm.
concerned and style, which we have referred to as tween horror, which I think is like absolutely accurate.
Hmm.
um
And it's PG-13 too.
It
I'm
is
pretty
PG-13. Well, it had to be. So like for those for listeners, for those of you who don't know, right? Five Nights at Freddy's is based on a video game. It's based on a web game. And it is something it was like a big I gotta look up when it actually came out, but I remember it being like a big like just pre-pandemic game, maybe.
yes.
And so like its desired audience is like my current students who are like I mean they're teenagers but they're drawing on their nostalgia for like the ages of 11, 12, 13,
Hmm.
stuff like that. So it yeah, it like it for me like the genre of it kind of sat sour, but like I think that it's just like a factor of it not really being for me, or for people of our age bracket.
Hmm. I found
Hmm.
it perfect for my age bracket.
You liked it though. Yeah, yeah,
I thought it was for late 30s, early 40s. It was
yeah.
perfect.
It's funny because I loved it too, but I felt like it was like, yeah, I felt like it was for like younger people, but I was like, oh, this is for our age too, because it's a callback to like some of those like movies we grew up with. Like it just
Mm,
felt like, and it didn't feel like uh what I call the it problem, which is like, or the Stranger Things. So it's like an ensemble of children running around and like solving things. Like
mm,
Goosebumps did it, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark did it. Like it was nice to see a tween movie that wasn't doing that. Like it was like
mm.
had a new plot.
I
Yeah.
definitely sensed some of the like like it definitely picked up on like the sort of fetishizing the 80s a little bit. Like there was some of that in there. But yeah, I agree. It's not like a kind of like I think of the source material of like Stranger Things and those kinds of movies as really being very much like E.T.,
Mm,
you
yeah.
know?
Yeah, that's it.
um just like this band of like rascally kids who are just like doing stuff like being bad but serving a higher purpose that their parents don't understand, you know?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah, absolutely. I wanted to also maybe just pick your brains a little bit about my feelings on like a capitalist critique in this movie, if we can, if before we like move into like critiquing it and talking about what was good and bad. Um, I felt like there was this moment in so first of all, let's like big picture here. Chuck E. Cheese, right? That whole concept of um an animatronic arcade is such a product of the exact time that it came from, which was the like late 70s, early 80s. And they were places that were designed to be uh like like traps, right? Like family trap. Like you go there as a family, and the point of the place is to just like wow you with novelty and suck the money out of you, right? There's a really fascinating podcast, Decoder Ring. So they just take like different like myths and pop culture stuff. Sometimes it's just interesting stories from history and they just like tell them. But there's one really fascinating one about the Chuck E. Cheese wars, which is there were two rival essentially Chuck E. Cheese companies that um we're trying to do the same thing at once. And it talks very much about it as like a business of novelty and a business that was about exploiting the novelty of animatronics to take these like wealthy middle class families in the 1980s and get as much money out of them as humanly possible. And so when I think about that and I think about this movie being set in like a abandoned Chuck E. Cheese, right? Like that kind of like turned some of those things on in my brain. And then there was also just this moment. It was so weird. Like when the babysitter Max is first introduced into the movie, she's like watching TV and she's watching like QVC or something, and she's showing some kind of like wedding ring or something. She says, I wish I had somebody to buy me a wedding ring, right?
Mhm.
And at first I thought that she was like interested in Mike or like attracted to Mike or something and trying to like hint that way at Mike. But then it turned out that she was uh plotting against Mike and didn't really show any other interest in Mike in a way. And so I thought maybe that was just more about her desire for that thing. And then there was the fact that was it her brother who was like also plotting against Mike? Like that Aunt Mean Lady was trying to pay her brother and her to like get information, get the dirt, right? And it seemed like they were doing it for like not a ton of money, right? It was like $200 for her to like do night after night of babysitting and $1,000 to take on this like huge legal liability of like right. And so it just got me thinking about like money, poverty, like the way that economics influences how this movie plays out.
Hmm.
It opens up in a mall pretty much when he's the security guard in a mall, which is like another like space of like sucking you dry of your money.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I don't know. Like, is there anything there? Am I just like kind of grasping at the wrong straws? What do you think?
I'll just say the other fun ad that was in there was for the Chia Pet. And
Yeah.
like they're just the inclusion of commercials of a certain era was kind of an interesting thing. And I mean, in terms of I guess to me, the ants' motivation was not super clear, but it seemed like it was about greed from what Mike said was like, she doesn't even care. She just wants the money from the government for, fostering a child or something like that. Um, so I don't know where I'm going with that in terms of connecting it to this, but uh,
But yeah, I mean, it seems like, in that way, sort of the lurking monster that is not really spoken is that desire for like monetary reward,
mhm.
sort of, if that
Yeah.
makes any sense. I don't know. Like, it's not the
Is that
primary monster, but it seems like a notable secondary one.
is
Mhm.
that only with the um villains per se that they are the greedy ones? Because I feel like Mike gets the job so that it looks good to the court for his sister, not for money reasons.
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
yeah, little girl doesn't seem to care about toys. She wants to play with friends.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that there is a distinction to be made between like why Mike takes the job and why Max and her brother take the job, right? Like, or is there? Or like, is everybody just like, does everybody just have the boot on their neck financially throughout this whole movie, except maybe for Aunt What's Her Face? I don't know.
Yeah. She is the one who's trying. I'd say she has the most in her presentation, comes across as the one who has the most money, but who's also greedy and also cheap in terms of like, because doesn't the guy, Max's brother, says, we'll do this for $2,000. And she says, no, 1,000. And like, this
Yes.
is something that they get killed for. Like, this is a very dangerous.
Right. Well, it's a dangerous, even without possessed animatronics, right? This is a really dangerous thing to be doing for
Yeah.
$1,000.
It's high risk. It's high risk because, like, if it's not that you get killed by these animatronic things, it is prison that is the risk you're running, and that is pretty rough.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and she clearly, you get the vibe that she clearly has $2,000. She just
Clearly,
doesn't
yeah, yeah, exactly.
like.
The other, I guess, weird thing is hanging on to this Chuck E. Cheese. The guy who's the owner, but at that point posing as the career counselor in the beginning and advising Mike about this potential job. Um, when he describes this place, he says something about the owner, I don't know, holding on to it. I mean, there's something weird about holding on to this place when it is not making you money and it's only costing you money. So it's like it's no longer a profitable
Mhm.
business and it's no longer kind of fitting within that capitalist logic of money making, and yet at the same time it is for this like weird, perverse, like creepy personal gain.
Mm.
So I don't know quite what to make of how he fits into the logic of all that.
Well, I think maybe if we like take I don't know, I'm just kind of shooting from the hip at this point, but like maybe if we take the idea of that, like this commitment to like this capitalist vision that is not even serving you anymore,
Mhm.
but that you still just have this kind of like this dirty investment in, right? Because like his investment in it is these dead children that he has killed and stuck in these robots. Um, maybe that's like maybe that's saying something about this sort of national awareness of capitalism and like where we are, where like more and more people recognize that there are like real huge flaws to it. And yet there's still just this kind of like dig your heels in mentality out there about it. Even probably among people who are ready to admit the flaws in it. I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
throwing it out there. I like it as an idea though.
And his is kind of like it reminds me of like how a serial killer would keep trophies. So it's not really related to like capitalism necessarily, but it is also like objects that you would own and possess, which I feel like does go along with capitalism.
Mhm.
In terms of those trophies too, and like acquiring the kids, the business that is supposed to consume the money of families by hooking their kids and getting the kids to beg to stay and play more games and all that ends up literally consuming the kids. Like
Mhm.
there's that moment when it talks about no, is it Vanessa, the police officer who's the daughter of the owner? And she says something like, no, it's not just that the ghosts embody them, it's that they're actual bodies or something. Do you guys remember that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, like their bodies, they're
are in the
in,
cages. Yeah.
which
Yeah.
just a question. They said that the cops searched the whole place at the time. Wouldn't like I get it that it's not gonna smell now because it's been so many years and like whatever, there's no skin or whatever anymore. But like at the time, wouldn't there be some kind of like stench or odor? It's too dark though. I mean, it's a tween movie. They can't be like, oh, it smelled like decomposing flesh. So,
Mhm.
I
yeah.
did
Yeah,
wonder.
yeah. That doesn't bother me so much. That's like a meaningful or a willingful suspension of disbelief thing for me. I don't know.
Oh yeah,
Like I
no, I
don't.
didn't care. It's just like,
It didn't bother me too much. But yes, I agree. And then there's the one robot that is basically just the skeleton,
Oh
right?
yeah, the fox. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. So that didn't make any sense. But anyway, to the idea of consuming children, right? Of the families that are supposed to be spending money at this Chuck E. Cheese like metaphor for capitalism. Um, I like, I mean, maybe that is the main critique of capitalism that I have been trying to put my finger on. And what is maybe ultimately on a meta level kind of like the main critique of capitalism overall, which is just that it is like this unsustainable thing, right? It's this thing it's not gonna last forever, and the cost you pay for it is the lives and the world of future generations, right? So in that sense, like it also kind of consumes children, right? Which is cool. And it's a lot of credit to give to Five Nights at Freddy's. Okay,
Yeah,
I'm
you
throwing it
really, really went real deep into it.
out.
Can be, I mean, it might not be that the director or screenwriter or whatever even had this intent, but the text itself is doing this.
Right, right, and this is what I deal in, right, as an English teacher. So
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Me too. Me too.
right on, right on.
Whatever they intended doesn't really matter, but the text is doing this.
Which, speaking of the director, I just want to say it's a woman director, which is unfortunately very rare in horror movies. So, I think though, I feel like I read something where the first two directors were fired or left or something. So I feel like, yeah.
I think this film was announced in 2015, if I remember
Oh,
correctly. Yeah,
didn't it come
it
out in, was it, what year did it come out? This year?
last year.
Yeah, last like
Yeah,
October or something. Yeah.
if I'm remembering correctly. So I guess my ideas of it being like a pre-pandemic thing might not have been quite accurate. Let me look it up. Exactly when did this game come out?
One thing about that, while you look that up,
Yeah.
is the puppets. One thing I loved about this is that it wasn't CGI. The puppets were real, actual puppets. And so I found this entertainment uh, weekly article, and I'm just going to read the quote. Who is this quote from? From the director. uh, Quote, they did have a life of their own at times. She said each of the different moving parts on the animatronic was puppeteered by a different person. So the
Hmm.
eyes were controlled by someone, the arms were controlled by someone, the ears and jaws were controlled by a different puppeteer. So like they were actual, like real, tangible.
Oh, cool. I thought it was people in a suit. They were animatronics?
No, I think it sounds like they were like controlled by them? Yeah, because it says the puppeteers had a remote control in their hand. Um, I don't know who made them though.
Huh.
That's so
Oh,
cool. That's so like 90s Spielberg. I have great respect for that. That's awesome.
they were built by Jim Henson's Creature Shop.
Mm.
So I miss real effects. So
Me too. No, I love practical effects. Always look better than not that practical.
so wait, did you find what year it was?
It was so the game came out in 2014. So apparently I misremembered earlier. But yeah. Yeah, and the movie was announced shortly after the success of the game, and it has been kind of like a troubled production history.
I mean, I think it did well in the theaters though.
I think it did, yeah, largely because of my students.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Well, I picked this movie because so I made my students write an a set of personal essays this year, and more than one of them, of the many topics that they could have discussed, wrote about seeing the Five Nights at Freddy's premiere. And I thought this is, you know, like I think it speaks to the idea that this is very much a movie for like a really select audience. And that audience is young. And something also that I think are someone said that the Dream Book is like a feature of one of the offshoots of the games, is that there's kind of a complicated set of stories and backstories to these games that like we aren't really privy to. and that might also help people to understand what goes on in the movie and to analyze it and examine it and think about it too. So I think that's just worth considering and throwing out there, that there's like a whole other kind of layer to this, that because we are the ages we are and the interests that we have, like we just don't have access to it. After watching the movie, I did download the original game on my Switch, because it's on Switch now, and I played through one round of Five Nights at Freddy's, because although I love horror films and can put myself through the most eviscerating, brutal of horror films, 6 minutes in a horror video game and I am like peeing myself on the couch and weeping in a corner. I can't handle it.
Why? What do you think is different about the experience?
It's the idea of agency in it. The idea that I am making the decisions of what happens rather than passively watching someone else's decisions. Makes a huge difference. Totally.
So like walking through a haunted house would be
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I can't. I love horror movies. I cannot walk through a haunted house.
Oh, I'm fine with a haunted house, because those usually are really tacky and just like stupid, and I don't know. They don't bother me as much as a horror video game, which is like full horror film production level. Like you are in a horror film, but you're choosing what to do and not to. It's disturbing for me. Anyway, all that to say, I downloaded the game and I played it, and I noticed that there is a certain cheekiness to it. Like, so the game is a lot of what you see in the movie, but the idea is that you are just standing in the security room and you have access to two doors, one on either side of you. And the whole point of the game is to watch the security feed of different rooms and then close one of the doors before one of the figures gets to you, basically, right? But as you're watching the security feed and you're seeing the figures move around the restaurant, they're funny. They are like winking at you in the camera and like being kind of silly. And there's like a whole like tone thing there that I think is translated into the movie. But because I wasn't aware of that tone thing, I was not super into it when I watched the movie. I don't know. How'd y'all feel about the tone of the movie?
Well, I have a question actually related to tone and to humor, since you mentioned them being kind of funny. There were a few moments, and I'm going to go back to my notes to see if I can find them all. But when I laughed out loud, and one of them was when Vanessa comes to the house and Mike opens the door, and Abby is standing there too. And she says, Mike didn't tell me he had a daughter. And Abby just goes, gross. And I thought, and there were a couple of different moments like that where there was a character just who said something that actually made me laugh. And so I was curious from you guys with the actual horror experience, is that common that there are those lighter, humorous moments, or is it not?
I would say it depends on the movie. So like the ones that we had mentioned, like Casper and Addams Family from the 90s, I think combine like humor and spookiness together without being like a horror comedy, because they're like
Yeah,
between
yeah.
movies. But like Jordan Peele's Us, the beginning is very funny. Like it really blends humor and horror, and then it kind of goes more into the horror than the humor. But I do think there like even some of the slashers like Chucky, like the whole Chucky series, most of it I should say is like so campy, ridiculous, kind of like meant to be funny, or like Freddy's one-liners are like kind of like not super serious. It's not quite the same humor,
Yeah.
but I kind of think that humor and horror do go together in a
Yeah.
way.
I do think that humor is it's useful, in a movie. With this movie, because it is like, I feel like it's a little trying to reach for a young audience. I feel like it's trying to be a gateway horror movie, like we've been saying, and so it's got this whole like middle act that's like, it's like not a horror movie,
Hmm.
you
Oh, is
know?
that like the middle act where they build the fort? Like
Yeah,
that?
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. That whole like, it's not a scary movie. Yeah, it feels like a Jim Henson movie, you know?
It's very sentimental. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's weird.
I want to throw out there just one of the other funny moments and see if you guys enjoyed this too. But it was when Mike goes to the pharmacist to get more sleeping pills. And the pharmacy guy, it was being so sweet. He's like, well, you know what works for me? And he starts to talk about it. And I think Mike just walks out. And then the
Yeah.
pharmacist goes, what an asshole.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
I
then
laugh at that.
it just like kind of caught me by surprise, but in a way it just was funny. And I guess it also goes with the tween thing. Like, is that the most extreme language we actually got in the movie? Asshole.
I think so. There is not an F word in it, is there?
Well, an F word I think would make it an R rating, wouldn't it? Like, are
I
there
think you can
certain
have
R's that you can have it in one or the other?
I think there is a concrete number of fucks you can have in a movie
Hmm.
Okay.
before it becomes R-rated, and I'm about to look that up.
Yeah, because I don't know what constitutes like what's the line of PG-13 and R?
Yeah, yeah. Well, the pharmacist, he's the one I think who might have gotten us closest.
Yeah, yeah, because it's not like super bloody or gory either. Because I think one of the more shocking kills is when the like bear robot bites the Max, is it Max in half? And I was
Yes.
like, oh shit. But like it's in like a silhouette, so it's like
Yeah,
for children. I
Mm.
don't know.
yeah. It's also a little funny because it's just kind of, I don't know, confusing. And it's like, it's a really clean cut. You know, he just bites her right in half and it's not that much of a mess.
It is weird, isn't it? Yeah, it's a bizarre death. So just to answer our question, this is from CNBC. And I'm quoting here from this article. There are exceptions, usually when the word is just repeated in a short time or used as a part of an emotional scene. But any movie with more than 3 F-bombs likely couldn't remain PG-13. And if the word is used to signify sex, the film automatically gets an R rating. So I don't know if y'all know
Mm.
anything about the MPAA, the motion picture. Is that
Oh,
what
okay.
they're called?
I think
The
so.
rating, bizarre criteria for how they rate things, and an interesting study into the puritanism of America. But yes, so there's your answer. 3.
That seems like like if a child hears it 3 times, what's the difference
It's
with like
arbitrary. Yeah, totally arbitrary. Yeah.
uh,
Jen, you didn't give your
oh,
take on the
oh, I like the tone. I feel like it fits with that like tween type thing. Like I feel
Yeah.
like because I do feel I'm trying to think of other new ones that have come out besides what do you call it? Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark and Goosebumps. And
Mm,
those are not even that recent, and I can't think of other ones because
yeah.
clearly I'm not the demographic. But
Right.
I feel like I also felt like this one was a little bit more on the dramatic side than some of those.
Mm,
I
count.
actually kind of liked that it was like kind of sweet and sentimental at times,
hmm
and
Mhm.
not just humor. But the tone
Yeah.
didn't bother me. I felt like the tone was consistent throughout the film.
Oh,
So
I wholeheartedly disagree. What?
I don't know, I do.
Oh my gosh. Act 1 was very grim. Like, I felt like Act 2 was very family. And then Act 3 like kind of tried to do a little bit of both, I felt like.
Tell me which act is which.
All right. So like from the beginning, uh we open with a security guard frantically trying to escape the security room.
Oh, that scene.
Right. We open with that. Hang on, let me finish. We open with that. And then that through, I'd say, Mike's first night at Freddy's felt very I don't know, it felt like they were really focusing on the um the struggle, like Mike's struggle to, hold down a job, and with also like the dark scariness of the of Freddy's. Also, maybe this goes through the attempted sabotage on Freddy's. Max and her brother have tried to break in, but they all they're murdered in a grisly manner. Then after Max is dead, what I'm thinking of is Act Two, where Abby has to come to work with Mike. And that's when it's a family film. And it's just like a bunch of people having fun with puppets and like building forts and shit. And like she's making great friends with them. And then after he promises them Abby unwittingly in his dreams, that's when Act Three cues up. And that's when it gets more violent again and darker.
But do you feel like there were little bits of humor throughout? Because like the kill, like the cupcake, it's actually like the cupcake is the first one to really like come alive and attack.
Mhm.
Um, and it's so fucking cute and like stupid. Like that a cupcake would do that.
Mm.
Like I feel like there's like humor in
Not
that.
that there isn't humor throughout, because I agree with you. There is humor throughout, but for me, what for me makes the different vibes is the sense of impending danger,
Mhm.
you know, um, which is really wholly absent from that middle section that I mentioned.
Mm.
You know what? I actually thought that for me, maybe the scariest part was in that middle section. And it ends up not leading to something scary, but it's when Abby's in her tent or in her fort in the security office, and there's a voice that comes in, and we don't see the presence, but that says her name. And she gets up and she kind of taps on Mike, and he doesn't wake up. And she's like, she's going to go look around or whatever. And it turns out, like you're saying, she's playing with them and she ends up having a good time. But I actually wrote down scariest part. I feel sick right now
Mm.
about that. And I think partly because it would have been so awful for him. I actually was especially worried for Mike at that point because I'm like, if he loses another kid and he has to live with his sister dying, it's just like emotionally and psychologically too much and I can't handle it. So I found that part to be terrifying.
Mm.
That's so interesting. I kind of love that like it's the moment that because nothing's happening, like maybe there's the most suspense or worry in that like nothing's
Yeah.
happening, so you're expecting something to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it turns out they're in that circle and you can't see what they're doing for a while and then it turns out they were tickling her.
Right.
How do giant metal puppets tickle someone?
We're not going to ask that question. We're not going to ask that question.
It's kind of funny that we all have different like interpretations of like the tone or what was happening in moments.
Yeah.
Really.
Well, I think that's that's really interesting, actually. One of the things I wrote down about this movie was that it was tonally confused. I wrote it in here. You want to see my crazy chicken scratch writing right there? It says tonally confused right
I
there.
like it. That's the biggest out of all your notes. Like it's just written like huge across the page.
It really is. It's like all caps. I actually wrote a lot of notes on this movie, like more than I've written about other movies that are much more serious. I feel like there is a real disagreement between the critics and the fans on this movie. If you go to Metacritic or Rotten Tomatoes or whatever, critics are giving this thing like 30%, and fans are giving it like 90%.
That's
And
interesting.
and I think that there is something interesting in the fact that like none of us agree on what the tone of this movie is, that there's just a certain je ne sais quoi about it. Maybe it's about the audience, maybe like, again, maybe we're just the wrong audience or whatever. But I just think that it's interesting. It says something maybe about the overall quality of the film, and I'm not sure if that's a good or bad thing, honestly.
Do you think since you mentioned the 30% and the 90%, I
Yeah.
think we should rate it
I'll go first, but it's gonna be a really boring answer. It's gonna be like like 6, like totally mid.
It's so funny. I always thought you were going to give it lower.
No, I mean, so my rating is because, I was not particularly thrilled by it, so I am taking in my own personal reaction to the film. But also, my rating is seriously mitigated by the fact that I really do think that, like, I am not the target audience of this movie, and also by the fact that I haven't really played that much Five Nights at Freddy's or dived into the lure of Five Nights at Freddy's, and there's just like this whole seething horde of people on the internet who really have, and they've spent over a decade on it at this point, and so yeah, just like from my own lack of excitement about it, and my feeling like there's something about it that I'm just not getting. That's what produces just like I feel like I have to by default just give it like a in the middle.
Megan, what would you give it?
Can I score it like ice skating and give it? Don't they do like an execution score and like a difficulty score or something like that?
Allow it.
I want to give it. So I want to give it a 9 for difficulty and for the ideas that it's thinking about. I felt like the backstory and the psychological parts of it were really, really interesting. I thought the thing with dreams was really interesting. I thought the stuff with trauma was super interesting. But for execution, I think I'd give it more like a 5 because I don't think I really wanted to see that explored through the animatronics. And I just felt like there were moments where I was like, wait, how did we get from those children who were abducted to these metal creatures? Like, I feel like I'm missing several steps of the logic there, which might have just been me, and maybe I needed to study it more closely. But I think I'm going to average it out at a 7.
Oh, wow. It's higher than I thought you would have given it, honestly.
I think part of it was being pleasantly surprised by it not being so terrifying, because I was like, oh, whatever this is going to be, I'm going to come in giving it a 3. But I was like, okay, I got through this fine. It did not traumatize me. So I think that deserves a low C.
Yeah, I feel like I watched it twice because I had seen it when it first came out, and then I watched it again today before work and after work. I split it up because I was like, oh shit, I don't remember anything from this movie and I need to watch it. And I really enjoyed it because it reminded me of those movies that I really liked when I was a kid. And there was something in that. I agree, Megan. I really liked that sense, like that backstory. It was complicated. And I remember reading some review where they were like, oh, we hated the like child being abducted. I'm like, this is the whole fucking plot. And it was interesting. It felt new. It felt different. I liked the visuals. I liked that it was practical effects. Yeah, there's loopholes, but it's a kids movie, so it can't be like, yes, he chopped up the bodies and shoved them in the metal pieces. Like it gets too dark.
They can't really give me what I'm looking for in terms of filling in all the stuff.
Just like a whiteboard with like how it was done. I feel like I wavered between a 6.5 and a 7. I feel like my fucking ratings for this podcast are all over the goddamn place. And I feel like and I've realized
I'm not agreeing. I'm just saying I am I'm sympathizing because I feel the same. I feel like
Oh, good. Okay. I thought you were like, yeah, Jen. Like,
yeah, Jen, you have to get your shit together because this is a disaster.
I realized I rate them not by how they were made, not by how well, whatever, but if I like them personally and if I'd watch it again, and I feel like this could become like a comfort horror movie. So I think I'm gonna go with a 7.
All right.
Before I forget, one other thing I wrote in my notes was at the end when the little blonde kid, I forget his, does he have a name? Maybe he doesn't have a name.
Ugh,
Uh,
do any of them?
it's not important. The victims' names, whatever. He shuts the door on Matthew Lillard, and I just was like, oh my God, it's like Saw when they shut the door and it's like game over. But I was like, it's a small
Yes.
child doing it. I was like, I find that very funny. I don't know.
Oh, I
Yeah.
wonder if that connects to the game because you were saying, right, the game you have to close the doors before the guys
Yeah,
get.
that's like the only agency you have in the game is to close the
Huh.
doors at the right time. Yeah.
Wow.
I wonder if, yeah, that would make sense.
That boy closed the door at the right time.
He sure did. Can we talk about the fuck moments? Is that okay?
Yeah, yeah.
So
You
my
wanna
what the fuck moment was my slow dawning realization that it was Matthew Lillard in this movie. Because the very first scene that we see him in, he's the career counselor, and he's got, kind of like a salt and pepper beard, and he's looking older because he is older. And it just was this like slowly like, man, like I feel like I know this guy. What have I seen him in? Holy shit, it's Shaggy. Right? That was my like dawning realization that it was Matthew Lillard.
That was your what the fuck moment?
Yeah,
Oh
just
my God.
realizing it was Matthew Lillard. That's my what the fuck moment.
Oh my God. Megan, what was yours?
I think it was probably when Mike goes back to Freddy's with Abby and Vanessa's there, and he says to her, I think, ghost children are possessing giant robots. And that was the moment where I was like, wait, what? Like, just how did you put this together so quickly?
Mm,
It felt like he just put the whole story together with very little kind of on-ramp to get there.
in very few words,
And
yes.
very few words. I was like, oh wow, what steps did I miss? Because I think that there were several. So I think that was probably my what the fuck moment.
I totally agree with that. And also, my other what the fuck moment was the scene where he realizes that she has some sort of extra sensory perception. Do y'all realize this? Like when he like sees her drawings and he realizes that like she's been seeing the children
Oh,
in her
Oh,
dreams, and like he just like he accepts this information so quickly.
so fast.
Like
He's like, yeah,
so quickly.
he
ghost children.
also, with that, then at the end, in order to shut the whole thing down, basically, he's like, oh, just draw a picture that tells the kids that this bunny is bad, and then it'll save the day. And it did. All she had to do was draw the picture of the bunny being the bad guy instead of the
Well,
happy guy.
Megan, because pictures are powerful for children.
Pictures
Didn't
are
you hear
powerful.
the therapist say that?
She did, and I think that the plot proved pictures really are powerful.
Yes, don't shit on, don't say little artist kids are weird. I mean, because they're probably seeing ghost children that were murdered by people dressed as
Wait,
rabbits.
wait, Jen.
What? That's my childhood.
Did did you see Ghost Children? Is that why?
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah,
is that why you
this
make
movie is
art?
my biography, my autobiography. Yeah, all artists do. What? Oh my God. Yeah, my what the fuck moment was uh either I wasn't paying attention the first time I watched it or I am that oblivious, but I was like, "Oh shit, Matthew Lillard is the killer." So I did not see that coming.
Didn't either.
Okay, good. All right, because
Well,
I
you
was like,
did.
"Shit, I've seen that coming."
Oh, I did.
And I mean, the guy did before, and I even wrote this down. Didn't he said at some point, I'll see you on the flip side, hopefully. I mean, there were definitely things that I felt like at the end, oh yeah, I probably should have known since he was like the only option. But
There were no
still
other, unless it was the
didn't
aunt.
know.
Like who would it be? Yeah,
So who's the hottest? The cop? Is it Mike? Is it Aunt Jane, her lawyer?
definitely the cop.
You think it's the cop?
Mhm.
That's your pick.
To me, yeah.
I mean, the cop
Why
is
not? Why not Mike? If I may.
I'd make an argument for Mike.
I mean,
I
he's
think
cute.
he looks kind of I think he looks kind of he's like scruffy and he's worn out. He's having a hard time, but I think I like a man with some psychological vulnerability, and he's got that,
Mm,
you know.
Someone you could like fix. Um,
His hurt, it just makes me want to hug him.
hmm
oh my, I feel like he's too sad for me.
mm.
I feel like it would be annoying after a while. I'd be like, okay.
I was just gonna say how sadness factors into affect hotness ratings. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it has like a little sadness, but not too much sadness.
I think that Mike is, if I may, it seems like he's too. He seems too fit for the level of sadness that it feels like he's dealing with. Is that offensive to say? I don't know.
I feel like he should be like uh more like disheveled looking or like less
Yeah.
less pretty.
I think they tried to make him look a little disheveled. Like he has that kind of like patchy beard and his hair is kind of messy, but he's still pretty fit. You know what I mean? Like he looks good.
Mhm.
He does. Yeah.
I will say
He's
the police officer, she really holds it together considering everything going on in her life.
yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah,
That's
I
like
mean,
her way of asserting control over a life that she can't control.
I felt like her hotness was and just her character overall just felt very like two-dimensional to me and largely like like a device basically. Um I don't know. I literally I think the thing I said when she showed up in the movie because I was so done with this movie about hot people being scared was like, "Oh, look, it's Officer Marriageable Woman."
I like that the lack of realism takes away from the hotness for you.
It does, and that's very consistent with who I am. Yes.
Yeah. What about Max? I think she's worth consideration
Okay.
too.
Oh
So
yeah.
listen, and this dovetails right in with our conversation of realism and hotness. I was gonna pick I was gonna pick Max actually, just because like there's like some real baggage there. You know what I mean? Like you could see it. Um, and she felt like one of the realest characters to me in the whole movie.
Mhm.
Despite her bizarre halving, that was her death. But that didn't seem real,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, because I think I was between Mike and Max, and I still am landing on Mike, but I think
Mhm.
she might be my number two.
Max has like some attitude too. Like she's kind
Mhm.
of pissed off a little bit. You want to know why, but you kind of don't want to know why.
Mhm. Mhm.
This is a really random one other question for you guys.
Please.
What did you think about the lighting? Because I think this movie made me realize that bad electrical is just so powerful and so terrifying.
Mm.
If the lights don't work well and they flicker sometimes, like nothing else for me has to be going on, just the lights.
Oh yeah.
It's so creepy. I really like the lighting. When you said that, I was like, there's a sign I pass by on my way home all the time that
Mhm.
flickers. And
Ooh.
it's just flickering because it's low on whatever it's low on, but it's fucking creepy.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the fact that it was like kind of like dark the whole time,
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
electrical had to work. I do have a question about that though, mentioning electrical. At the end of the movie, when they're like running out, did I did I miss something? Why are all the lights falling off the ceiling and like things are suddenly falling apart? Like,
I
Hmm.
don't know, just to make it feel like the end of Aladdin or some shit.
Oh,
Like
that happened at the end of Aladdin?
like I don't know, like every Disney movie like ends with like the bad guy's lair falling apart in the end. Like
Fair enough. Okay, okay. I
Okay,
mean, I
this is
feel
a
like that
layer
was
falling apart.
But I think that to speak more like generally about the idea of flickering lights and why they're scary, like darkness is one of the fundamental human fears, right?
Yeah.
And the idea of flashing lights in between the darkness allows you to see a thing that is approaching you, but to not mark its every move. And so there's like still some guesswork involved and scariness. And so I think that's why it's such a commonly repeated trope. I mean, because it's effective, because it just like appeals to our primal fears.
Hmm. Hmm.
I actually keep thinking that Megan with like your chalkboard backdrop.
I know.
It's so dark. I'm like, it's like something's gonna come out.
I know. I know. I give a really creepy vibe here, actually.
It was really spooky when you turned before you turned your light on. I was like, oh shit, this person's hardcore.
I do want to say before we like, I don't know if like we're towards the end. Do you want to actually plug Megan's other like podcast?
Wait a minute, what?
Yeah. So Megan, do you want to tell what you do so people can like listen to it and find it?
Yeah, sure. So I actually do a podcast with Jen's partner Tegan, and it is called The Office Hours. And we just analyze The Office, and we go through episode by episode. And the our little kind of tagline that explains what we do is um, two literature professors analyze the great American story, because I would contend that The Office is the great American novel on TV.
Oh my God,
So
sign me
yeah.
right the fuck up. I'm literally
Are
subscribing
you
right
looking
now.
it up?
Excellent, yeah. So the office hours, and I mean, buckle up because we take at least an hour and a half every 22-minute episode, but we find a lot of things to discuss.
And you guys are on like episode 60, right? Or something crazy?
Something
Aren't you?
like that. We just started season 4. Yeah.
Have you gotten to the one where Jim and Pam go to Michael's house for dinner with
Not yet.
oh baby.
It's coming soon, though. We got a lot to look forward to there. Yeah.
Very nice. Well, I mean, I'm sensing we're kind of at an end here. Megan, thank you so much for joining us. And braving your fear of horror for this conversation. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you for giving me the gateway tween horror. It worked for me.
Oh, our pleasure. Our pleasure.